Hello, I'm Antonio Mora. This is the News and News.com Day in Brief on April 16th at about 7 p.m. Tales of heroism are emerging from the inferno at the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. Hundreds of firefighters toiled through the night, risking their lives to put out the fire and save the main structure, but also courageously entering the church as it burned to rescue priceless relics and artwork. A priest, the chaplain of the Paris Fire Brigade, is said to have fearlessly braved the flames to retrieve the crown of thorns, and firefighters formed a human chain to save the treasures. They will be displayed at the Louvre during reconstruction, although some will need restoring. In an address to his nation, French President Emmanuel Macron committed to rebuilding the cathedral within 5 years and to make it more beautiful than ever. Fortunately, its great stone vault still stands, its two main towers survived, even though they're described as fragile, and the spectacular stained glass rose windows remain mostly intact, as a, quote, edifice built to last an eternity withstood its greatest test. Reconstruction will be aided through documentation, including minutely detailed 3D laser scans. And money may not be an object. Already, the private sector in France has pledged more than $700 million. But challenges remain, and experts believe the rebuilding could take more than a decade. Materials may be a problem. Europe may not have big enough oak trees to replace the enormous wooden beams destroyed by the flames. The spire, which collapsed, was a relatively recent 19th century addition. One big decision that needs to be made is whether to try and restore Notre Dame exactly as it was, or to take a more creative 21st century approach. However, those of us who feared that the great cathedral was lost can now be optimistic that future generations will have the chance to be awestruck by the marvel of Gothic architecture. President Trump insists that he's not worried about the planned release of a redacted version of the Mueller report on Thursday. He claims it will show the Russia meddling investigation was a total phony. Trump also went on the attack, saying the report was written by 18 angry Democrats, and seized on Attorney General Bill Barr's suggestion that there had been spying on his campaign, arguing that, quote, crimes were committed by the other side, not by him or his campaign. Other Republicans, though, may be taking Xanax. Republican investigators reportedly fear bias in the way the Mueller report presents its evidence, and White House officials who cooperated with the special counsel investigation are reportedly worried the report will expose them as having provided damaging information. Separately, in a rare show of bipartisanship in the House Intelligence Committee, both its chairman, Democrat Adam Schiff, and its ranking member, Devin Nunes, have written Barr saying Mueller must brief them on his investigation. They also asked for all materials gathered during his probe. Just days before the 20th anniversary of the Columbine massacre, Columbine High School and almost 24 other schools in Colorado's Jefferson County were placed on lockout. The county's sheriff announced a credible threat, apparently posed by a young woman who is wanted by police. Under increased security, students were released and after-school activities were allowed, except at Columbine itself. New satellite images show movement at North Korea's main nuclear site that could indicate reprocessing of radioactive material into nuclear bomb fuel, according to a D.C. think tank. Trump and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo say they remain firm in their demand that North Korea denuclearize by the end of 2019. The second summit between Trump and Kim failed because North Korea wants sanctions relief, but the U.S. wants Kim to first dismantle his nuclear program. Venezuela's dictatorship has refused to acknowledge that a desperate humanitarian crisis exists in the once wealthy country, preventing for years the delivery of international aid. Today, the regime relented and the first Red Cross aid was delivered. Sadly, it's only a drop in the bucket. Yesterday, Pompeo visited the Colombia-Venezuela border. More than 1.5 million Venezuelans have crossed into their neighbor country, seeking refuge from the brutality of the Maduro government and the lack of food and medicine. Venezuelan refugees demonstrated, begging Pompeo for freedom and for the U.S. to intervene. Pompeo said there would be consequences for the few countries openly standing with Maduro, including Cuba, China, and Russia. Trump has said all options are on the table, and the Pentagon is reportedly developing military options to deter Russian and Chinese influence, but any, quote, kinetic military action is unlikely. Trump says he has no regrets for sharing an inflammatory video of Minnesota Congresswoman Ilhan Omar alongside images of the World Trade Center towers on 9/11. He said she has been, quote, extremely unpatriotic and extremely disrespectful to our country. Omar has been widely criticized for downplaying the terrorist attack in comments she made about discrimination against Muslims after 9/11. She has faced increased death threats, and House Democrats moved to shore up her security, accusing Trump of putting her life at risk. However, some progressive Democrats are slamming Speaker Pelosi, saying she didn't move quickly or forcefully enough to defend Omar. Democrats' outspoken support for Omar now marks a departure from their approach earlier this year, when many of them distanced themselves after she made remarks that were viewed as anti-Semitic. Fentanyl, heroin's synthetic cousin, is about 10 times more deadly, and barely visible trace amounts can kill you. Now the Department of Homeland Security is reportedly considering designating the painkiller drug as a weapon of mass destruction. An internal memo says, quote, its high toxicity and increasing availability are attractive to threat actors seeking non-conventional materials for a chemical weapons attack. Some experts, though, argue that using fentanyl as a weapon is a fringe scenario and that dozens of available toxic chemicals could be weaponized. That certainly doesn't make me feel much safer. Finally, the FDA has reportedly cleared a pill called Plenity that makes people feel full faster. It's the first FDA-approved or cleared weight loss treatment for people with a body mass index as low as 25, which is the threshold for someone to be considered overweight. A limited launch could begin later this year, and it may be available by prescription everywhere by 2020. I want some. We have all those stories and much more updated around the clock 7 days a week on newsandnews.com, where you'll find all you need to know in one place. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking on the right of your screen just below this video. Please follow us on Facebook at Real News and News, and follow me on Twitter at AMoraTV. I'll see you again tomorrow.